Very good morning, everybody. Day one of the Mining Indaba, the well-attended Mining Indaba in Cape Town. I'm Jeremy Maggs, and sitting in our small Transnet studio in the belly of the beast, so to speak. And over the next 3 or 4 days, a series of conversations with leaders at Transnet. And I'm going to start today with the Group Chief Operating Officer, Letsoalo. And the title of our conversation, we'll talk for about 25 minutes or so. The title of our conversation is How Transnet is Enabling Mining Competitiveness. Because unless the two are working in symbiosis, unless there is a positive operating environment, and particularly Transnet, well, as long as it's pulling its weight, obviously it has benefit not only for the parastatal itself, but also for the country's economy. So, Solly, a very warm welcome to you. And maybe let me start with that phrase that I've heard so often from Transnet, reinventing for growth. Let me ask you, what is fundamentally different about Transnet today, February 2026, and say 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, good morning, Jeremy. Before I answer you spoke about being belly of the beast. I was asked by people who realized I was working for Transnet and said, Solly, how are you? And where are you now? I said, I'm in the belly of the beast, getting slowly digested. 3 years ago, Transnet was in a crisis, fighting for survival, with employees that thought the end was nigh. Everything was going the wrong direction. All indicators, whether it was financial or operational, all indicators were going in the wrong direction. So the difference between Transnet 3 years ago and Transnet now is now you're starting to see in every aspect of the business, there's the improvement. Every KPI you look at shows that Transnet is now improving performance, whether it's safety, security, operations, finances. So that's the big difference. And I think another difference that employees in Transnet now have got the hope that things are coming right, that they've got employment, that they can contribute, they're given the opportunity to contribute, and that what they do matters. Whereas in the past, they were more afraid. They were criticized by the customers, by the media, even amongst themselves. Employees were criticizing each other. Right now, I'm seeing unity amongst employees across different businesses, across different functions, everybody trying to contribute their bit to get Transnet to reinvent itself and to deliver.
You use the phrase, things are coming right. Do you think this is about just stabilization within the organization, or is there the foundations of more of a growth-led logistics system? Do you genuinely believe that you have turned an important corner?
A year and a half ago, we stabilized the business. Just before we showed that improvement, the very first improvement we reported in the market. At that stage, I would say a year and a half ago, the business was stabilized and starting now to recover. So I would say we were way past the stabilization zone. We passed the recovery, and now we conflated. Probably I'm running ahead. We are going through 3 stages parallel. One of tactical recovery of the business. The second one is of reforming the business, and we'll talk about that later. And the third part is of growing the business. All 3 of them are now happening at the same time. So stabilization, we've gone past that.
What kind of leadership trade-offs, maybe that's the best phrase, that you had to employ to move from crisis to stabilization to recovery to growth? I mean, where did you have to make fundamental, difficult changes in that stabilization?
First and foremost is to win the support, the trust of all employees, getting them out of the zone of being victims to one of being victors, where they now believe that it can be done.
And how did you do that?
So this is by allowing employees and giving them an opportunity to participate. So throughout the organization, we created team structures where different employees from different functional areas, different ODs work together, identify the problems that needed to be addressed, projectize them, and together execute on the actions that we believe would make a difference. And this is multiple areas of the business. So we've got teams all over the company, from whether it's rail or port, everybody working together with one goal. And as you know, we get measured on tons that we move. So that target of moving tons united people. So the port people knew that how many tons needed to be moved through the rail system, through the port system. So did the rail people, so did the port authorities, so did the engineering side. So everybody had the same objectives and still had. And by having that same objective, it pulled them together and they each identified what they can contribute to that objective. And that objective was broken down into very clear and measurable contributions that each functional area or division of Transnet could make in order to achieve the overall goal.
Did you have to overcome a great deal of doubt and skepticism? And do you think that has truly washed through the system? There must surely, Solly, be pockets of concern within the organization. What are they, and how are you overcoming that?
The reality is that the reform agenda, if you look at it from employee side, and even those that are pro-Transnet, could be previous employees, they see reform as privatization, as taking Transnet and giving it to the private sector. So the skepticism of Transnet improving its performance, some of the roots lie there, that you're not going to improve, you're actually laying the foundation for private sector to take over Transnet. And that skepticism stays. And the media reports that used to come out in terms of Transnet being useless, the government needing to speed up reform, and that only the private sector can turn Transnet around, or can turn the logistics system around. Let me not use the word Transnet now. And that by leaving all of these facilities within Transnet, things are going to get worse. So some people believe that was true. And I'm happy that the majority of Transnet employees believe that the opposite was true, that Transnetters can do it. Transnetters can actually improve performance with the limited resources that were available within Transnet, but working together, utilizing the resources in a structured manner. Transnetters are able to improve and have shown that they can improve performance.
So which gains or improvements are you most proud of as an organization, and what still needs to be done?
Yes, well, the first one is just the big measure we get measured on is moving
tonnage.
Yeah, and because when 3 years ago that you referred to, the trend was downwards, that every year on year was a decrease in Boluge. Now we see the past 3 years, year on year, there's an increase in bolus. Every year on year, there was an increase in security incidences, people destroying the network. I mean, before I came back to Transnet, some of the pictures I saw of rail being cut, the copper wires being taken off. It showed an infrastructure that was under siege, under attack.
No, that hasn't gone away, though.
It hasn't, but less of it is happening. So that's another indicator that you're seeing less of that with the security system. From a safety point of view, lots of people used to get injured. Both our employees, our service providers, our subcontractors, and the public at large. When I look at those figures now, we see less and less of them getting injured, killed, or harmed in any. So that's another area of improvement. And then employees, our HR system gauges the culture and the attitude of employees. And the results that are coming out are showing more upward trend in terms of belief, in terms of the culture and the way of working. That shows that the company definitely is turning around, looking at various areas. Our equipment, our infrastructure, it still obviously needs a lot of work. But a lot of the work has been done to at least deliver the current performance. There's still a big gap, by the way, where the infrastructure needs to be and where it is at the moment. And that's the gap that creates this performance that's not meeting customer requirements.
Be a little bit more specific about that infrastructure gap and how are you going to close it?
Let's just look at what we mean by infrastructure. I mean, we've got the rail network that moves coal, manganese, iron ore, and other products. And that network itself has to be in a state that allows a lot more trains to run and run in the shortest time possible. But because the network is so worn away, we've got steel tracks, we've got what we call sleepers, we've got other power supply nodes in the system that are so worn out that need to be replaced. And when you don't have them replaced, for example, you have to run the trains slower. And in areas where we have signaling, which is like having traffic lights, those are no longer electronic or electrical. It's now manual. People have to, a train driver has to get on a radio and a controller on a radio and say, now you must stop there. Now you can go. Whereas when the signaling system is in place and working, it's automatic. Right now it's manual. Therefore, the trains stop longer to do that. In the ports, you've got all of this equipment that needs to move cargo, and it's so old now and poorly maintained, or was poorly maintained, that it handled less cargo. So by bringing that back to standard, back to its manufactured standard or its design standard, we will be able to handle more volume at the right time. So trains will run faster. They would take shorter time. And then there would be a consistent performance that meets the customer's requirement.
I'm assuming at this massive event in Cape Town, you're going to spend much of your time, as I would imagine the Chief Executive Officer will, talking to customers. That's one of the principal reasons why you're here. Where do you think the expectations of your customers is still in deficit? Where does frustration still exist?
Let's look at the good results that RBCT presented. And they indicated they had a 10% increase in volume, and obviously attributing that to the improvement in the logistics system. They needed 20 to 30%. So yes, there's an improvement, yes, 10%, but they would have been happier with a 20 or 30% improvement. You would have seen the Kumba results as well, showed some increase in volume. They would have been happier with a much higher increase. So although we are improving in performance, customers still expect us to perform much better. They still believe that because of the volume that was moved in the past, they've got the standard. The standard that Transnet achieved, by the way, it's not a new standard. It's volumes that we were able to move in the past. They say, get us back to where you were some years ago. You managed to move 220 million tons. Now when you move 160, 170, there's still a gap of 30 million tons. You can cut that up into each customer's share, and they will all be seeing a gap. And then there's emerging miners that say, look, we want a gap, we want to get in, but you don't have the capacity to accommodate us. You're accommodating the majors, not leaving enough gap. So if we get our capacity right, then we are able to give space to the emerging miners as well. And in a combination of the as well-established miners and those incoming ones will then give this 250 million tons that the president talks about as the value or the volume of meat available for Transnet to meet.
Capacity is contingent on CapEx. Are you going to be able to afford to close the gap in the short term?
This is where obviously government is coming in to assist Transnet in with grants, PFIs, and also private sector is available to contribute. And the whole point of reform is to now capture or allow the private sector to invest in those areas that improve performance. So we have to have a combination of the two. The limited funds Transnet gets through loans and through grants from government, including customers' contribution, that combination of funding is what will get Transnet back to where it should be. So it's not just money coming from operations. It's all the other inputs, including private sector, by the way. By us allowing private sector to invest in train operations to, as you've seen in Durban, for example, we've managed to get a private operator come in and join up forces with Transnet. We're expecting that the investment from the private sector would obviously reduce the burden on Transnet, and we would see more capacity and better performance being created with the new gateway terminal in Durban.
Is the private sector partnership moving quicker?
Good question. If I look at the Durban terminal that I've referred to, was finalized 2 years ago. Private sector delayed it by taking us through to court, and now we're happy that it's working. So from a Transnet point of view, Transnet is doing all it can within its own delegated authority to move fast enough. However, if you look at it from a private sector, they think we're too slow because they believe that all of these things should have been put to market and private sector should be running these things now. Just, Jeremy, to take one project to financial close, 2 to 3 years, just the process, it takes long before you then have a successful business case that people are feeding on. So it is a long process.
A long process, but is there greater understanding between the two broad entities about where you're all heading?
There's a broader understanding between government and Transnet, where the thing is heading. The impatient private sector out there believes it can be done quicker. So that's that conflict. Since I've been now with Transnet, I can see how difficult it is to do it. It's not a straightforward exercise. And besides, when you do succeed like we did with the Durban Gateway, the private sector itself slows you down. So it's not if you don't do it properly, you'll end up in court. And you'll be stuck in court for the next 5 years with no success. Therefore, we need to do it right the first time. We've learned a lot from the Durban Gateway terminals. And now all of those lessons are being put into the new ones that we are busy with. And we'll be going out to market with the Richards Bay Bulk very soon. And we'll be going out to market a few months later with the manganese terminal in Gqeberha. And others. We've got a whole list of them ready this year that will be going out. But it took the last 2 years to prepare to go out now.
Preceding our conversation, I have had the opportunity to talk to people in the big hall, and a lot have said to me that competitiveness within this sector depends on predictable logistics. And obviously you would agree with that. If you were to look at the improvements that you have made within the organization, which corridors do you think are showing the clearest area of improvement right now?
The coal or the North Corridor, which is where coal is moving. I mean, based on the results, we've seen the 10% increase in volume that RBCT reported over the last year. It's the highest improvement. However, if you look at others like manganese, that's a big jump in terms of manganese that's handled through the system. And the gap, there's still more because a lot of manganese is on road. That is a big opportunity to move that onto rail and to handle it through the port system.
So what are you doing in that respect?
As I said, for manganese, we're busy now with the business case that's now getting towards the end. And in a few months' time, we'll be going out to market to invite the private sector to co-invest with Transnet in setting up a new facility in Gqeberha. And then also, we would be investing in the rail network to create more capacity to meet most of the manganese on rail. So that's what we're doing on the iron ore line, where we've made some improvements but not sufficient. We still need to restore the network, and the biggest job is just restoring the network because it's got a big backlog of maintenance that needs to be done. And this calendar year, we're gonna be doing most of that work that is required to bring back this network into working condition.
Sully, how difficult is it to balance quick operational wins, which are important and will particularly send out the right signal to your customers, with the deeper structural fixes that you need on the network? You're constantly, I imagine, having to find some kind of balance. How difficult is it to do that?
for now, one of the biggest challenges for us now is the fact that we need to focus on reform. And that's the questions you were asking me earlier in terms of bringing in the private sector. But in parallel with that, focus on improving performance. And same resources are required to do both at the strategic level. One of saying, how do we make a big jump in performance improvement? At the same time, how do we speed up the private sector participation? And all kind of conflated
without sacrificing one over the other.
The balance, to get that right balance, it's a big challenge. Customers, on the other hand, are supportive of both processes. So it's getting the right dose of customers in the reform process and the right dose of customers in the performance improvement side. And that's what we are balancing at the moment, to make sure that we still deliver to the country, because as you know, we are a bottleneck in the economic growth through logistics. And so we still need to do that in both the short term, and we need to do that also for the long term. So to balance between the two, in the long term, for example, I would rather stop the network now and do the refurbishment and not move anything.
That's not going to go down well, though.
Not going to go down well. So then that means short term, again, a sacrifice in the short term for long term goals being shifted out. So I'm trying to balance that to say, how do I get this network back into operation quicker, such that we can start performing at a much higher level? Remember, I said to you, the customers want to see this big jump, and the country needs the big jump by now.
Let me go into the weeds slightly, if I can. How important, or what role is data and real-time visibility playing in managing the corridor performance that you're talking about?
I wish we already had it in place. I wish we had totally integrated data throughout our logistics.
How close are you to that aspiration?
I think we're still about 3 years plus, where you can get the whole network visible, the whole system from mine all the way to port, and from the agricultural, from the growers all the way to port. That is possible. And I know there's a team of people working on this so that it makes the whole logistics visible. And we are working on it. Obviously, it's a lot of data to store, a lot of data to process. The end goal should be that we have a digital twin of the current installed facilities. Have it on a digital twin, that you don't have to actually go all the way to Richards Bay. You can see Richards Bay, a digital twin of Richards Bay, and see how things are moving, and be able to influence a change and use AI to make a change, to make the whole system run better. So we're still far from that. We're still busy putting our data system together, all the signals that need to go into that data system for a digital twin to be in place. That's where we should be going, and that's where we are going. But it's a long journey.
If you and I were to have this conversation, the same conversation in 2 years' time, and let's assume that we might, what would you hope the industry will say about your organization and the changes that it has affected?
The first thing they would talk about themselves. I will see RBCT saying, I'm now handling 71 million tons, or getting close to 81 million tons. I will hear on the iron ore corridor saying Transnet has handled 60 million tons, and we all have, are receiving the service that we expect from Transnet. I should hear the manganese people saying, we've handled over 20 or maybe 24 million tons. So there will be a measure that talks about the volume, but there will be another measure that talks about the quality of Transnet service to them. That we are dealing with business people here that understands the customer, that engages the customer, that delivers the service to customers. So Transnet will be seen as a partner to all of the users of both the rail, the port, and the pipeline system. You will see them referring to Transnet as their partner, preferred partner.
How important in this entire process that you've sketched to me has the leadership realignment be? Have this conversation.
So just think of it. 3 years ago, poor Michelle just got herself thrown into this as the new CEO in an acting position, and finally appointed as a permanent leader. And she had this monster to turn around, supported by the board and a good, capable executive team. That's the combination from the minister. Sorry, I forgot the minister. From the minister to the board to the GCE and her team, started the turnaround, the recovery, and then to spread that throughout the organization and to activate every single employee to support the turnaround and to believe that it can be done. I think that's where the leadership played a big role, to just instill that belief that we can do it. We don't have all the resources, we don't have all the money, but we can do it. With the little bit that we have, it can be done. And Transnetters have got the skills, the capability to do it. And they have done it, by the way.
I suspect you've got clients that you need to go and see. So I think I should end this conversation. Sally Letsoalo, thank you very much indeed. Group Chief Operating Officer at Transnet, talking to us as the first of a series of podcasts that we are going to have over the next couple of days with top executives at Transnet. Thank you very much. Appreciate it,
Jeremy.